Good morning, game fans. I've just finished playing the Marvel's Avengers beta, courtesy of the PlayStation pre-order, so I thought I would round up some of my initial impressions. Now, this is a game which doesn't seem to be causing much hype, which I guess should be a good thing. But that's why I feel a little odd, because I enjoyed my time with it, and I was genuinely expecting to see more people feeling positive about the beta. Sure, it ain't perfect, it borrows a lot more than it invents, and it definitely needs to bring more to the table when it's officially released in September. You know, minor bug fixes, matchmaking, and mission variation, but I was actually surprised at how much I felt they got right. Let's start with some of the most important aspects with a game like this: combat, character variation, and multiplayer. For me, they pretty much nailed 5 out of the 6 playable characters. This beta allowed you to get your hands on Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, Hulk, Black Widow, and Ms. Marvel. All are playable throughout in multiplayer missions, except for Cap and Thor, who only make an appearance in the initial A-Day Bridge story mission. The one character I didn't like the feel of and I felt needed a decent amount of work was Thor. He is the first character you play as in a section of the story we have all seen about 100 times, whacking away with Mjolnir. He felt slow to respond, sluggish almost, and I was worried that how he played was going to be an indication of how the other supers felt. Iron Man and Hulk in this section were also pretty ropey, largely due to the confines of the environment. Stark's flight capabilities were less than enjoyable, and Hulk's path of destruction was far too handheld. Then there was a glimmer of hope. Black Widow and Cap were a breath of fresh air, both feeling snappy and well weighted, with the former employing acrobatics and her pistols in a very pleasing way, whilst Cap was responsive, battering enemies with his shield in exactly the way you'd expect, having watched the movies of the MCU. My only gripe with Cap was that his shield didn't ricochet as you'd want, it just kind of bounced off any service and returned directly to you. No angles here. Having seen some of the skill trees of the other characters, it seems pretty likely that you'll be able to have Cap's shield bouncing off multiple enemies in due time, but for now, they seem to have thrown physics out of the window. And that takes you to the end of the much-viewed bridge mission. I can imagine that given how long this section of the game has been the only thing we've seen, that it is based on an earlier build, and maybe that's why it doesn't feel as slick as some of the newer sections, I hope. Sounds like I'm kind of down on the game so far, I know, but look, just bear with me, okay? The story mission that follows sees you take on the roles of Big Fisty and the Green Meanie as you track down Jarvis, who has been lost amongst other Starkian relics. This mission starts with a slow meander through a jungle as Troy Baker's Bruce Banner chats away to Kamala Khan, voiced by Sandra Sad. Having recently completed The Last of Us Part 2 and playing as Troy Baker in a lush and engaging world, the irony of this was not lost on me, as slow walking and movement is not this game's strong suit, and it felt floaty and unattached. Luckily, it is a tiny fraction of what you'll be doing, and you soon realise why the game's engine couldn't give a toss about it. You are soon in full rage mode as the Hulk, and suddenly the game finds its comfort zone. Leaping about as Hulk and smashing shit is bang on. You face multiple enemy types that you can give a good squashing. You also play as Ms. Marvel in this little tag team tete-a-tete, and she plays completely differently in all the right ways. And this is it. This for me is point numero uno for the entire game and what Square Enix need to do. Each character I played throughout the following hours in multiplayer felt varied, appropriate, and well designed. Hulk is a roaming behemoth who wants to jump on people's heads. Iron Man is a powerful but mobile military unit. Black Widow is nimble and capable, and Ms. Marvel is just hella fun. If the full game has a roster of characters all boasting their own unique abilities and styles, whilst maintaining enough similarity to allow you to swap between missions without too much adjustment, then they will nail it. So that's combat and character variation, but what about multiplayer? As to be expected, there were a few hiccups with matchmaking. I mean, isn't that to be expected with these tests? But after some experimentation, I managed to play a decent chunk of the available co-op missions with a friend, and these missions were built for this. In case anyone was under the impression that multiplayer was a take it or leave it, it is not. Playing with humans on your strike team is how this game was meant to be played. It allows for real-time support, like calling in Hulk when you're getting trounced or asking Iron Man to take care of aerial threats. Sure, playing with the AI can be fine in generic missions, but when you need them to actually work as a team, they may as well be a bunch of OP toddlers wobbling about after you screaming. Got to defend 4 areas? Good frigging luck getting the AI to help out. Got to split up to cover an area? Not a chance in hell. This wasn't helped by the fact that if I was trying to matchmake with randoms, the game would not load into some missions or it would just kick me out, so I did end up relying on the AI a few times, and how do you think that worked out? It would also be nice to see an option that doesn't force you to take 4 heroes with you to every multiplayer encounter. This may well be an option in the full game or one that comes later, but in the beta, being forced to take 2 AI companions to accompany you and your human buddy into every mission meant that you were often staring at some Hulk butt as you all converged into the same room. Some of these heroes can be pretty big, and the small spaces can get pretty cramped. I'm guessing being able to see what's going on isn't always a priority? Speaking of seeing, I mean, the visuals are fine. They're not breaking the mold or going to wow you, but they are perfectly serviceable in the game this wants to be. There are some very nice flourishes in some of the animations, like how Iron Man's air brake panels pop out to slow you down, or how Kamala effortlessly grows and shrinks. But the standouts for me have to be in the combat animations that look like they were taken straight from the MCU, like Black Widow's scissor head spinning thing or Iron Man's repulsor combos. If they wanted me to feel like I was playing the movie versions of these characters, they did, and I was so happy. Standout weak points, which are hard to gauge for the full game, would probably be the variation in enemy types and the length and objectives of the multiplayer missions. Enemies first, and whilst they look fine and are perfectly serviceable, there are simply not enough types. And I don't mean individual enemy models, I mean factions spread across the world. A game like this that channels a lot of what Destiny did could have also stolen their general variation. You know, they have those Mondo Chi-1 looking dudes in one area, and then some robot Terminator laserhead guys in another. It seems from this beta that enemies are all part of AIM, and you'll be facing a variety of enemy types, but they are all from one faction. Give me some ice giants in one area, you know, soldiers somewhere else, even some crazy comic book villains thrown in. I don't really want the possibility for every area and every encounter to feel like I'm fighting the same fight again, albeit with some variation and a little bit of a difficulty mod. And on that point, the multiplayer missions definitely need some work. They have different names and even different symbols, but wow, are they beige. It shouldn't really be that an attack mission is almost identical to a defense one, or for that matter, having to destroy 4 turbines should feel functionally identical to hacking 4 terminals. Move to area, push button, fight enemy can get old pretty quickly, especially when you factor in how ludicrously short some of these missions are. So here's hoping that the full release has a lot more variety, and I don't just mean by tacking on the story missions. Now, to some, those last points will seem pretty damning, and for good reason. What is this game without varied and engaging missions? But my pass here is that they really seem to be setting up this title as a games as a service game, and not as a one-off. And mission variation and even adding new factions is absolutely something that can be worked on over time, as long as there's enough to keep us busy. So all in all, a positive experience. I for one am looking forward to the game, but I am expecting a lot more, and no, new characters is not enough. But I do think this is a good place to be in, and to actually get a Marvel's Avengers game that we all want. Because do you know what? I think we deserve it. Anyway, let me know what you thought of the beta. Will you be picking up the game at launch, or do you need to see more? Or have you already decided to give it a miss? Stay frosty.